Welcome back to the channel. In 1985, I reported to Fort Knox, Kentucky for 3 months worth of one station unit training. It's where I attended basic training. I spent a total of 28 years in the active and Army Reserve. I spent 7 years in the basic training environment, either as a drill sergeant or as a company commander. So I have a few things to say. We're going to review a basic training video done by Business Insider. Let's go.
Why are you moving? Why are you moving? Huh?
This is Army Boot Camp. Before they join the United States Army, all recruits have to graduate from a 22-week program known as One Station Unit Training.
That's not entirely accurate. One station unit training typically applies to combat arms MOSs. In many MOS fields, it's a 10-week course of basic training, and then you go on to advanced initial training.
Also known as OSIT. It happens here at Fort Benning, a 182,000-acre military installation that
I spent a little over 3 years at Fort Benning, Georgia, there on Kelly Hill, and I can attest it is a massive installation.
straddles the Alabama-Georgia border about 100 miles southwest of Atlanta. Every year, more than 18,000 soldiers graduate before joining the more than 470,000 people actively serving in the Army.
13, 14, 15.
Although most of the recruits that we saw during our time there were male, recruits trained together in gender-integrated platoons.
These young men and women that volunteer to serve, they show up to us as civilians, and then we take them through a transformative process to turn them into soldiers.
Now, when I went through in 1985, they were not gender integrated training within combat arms. I never experienced that particular training environment. If you attended a gender integrated basic training or OSUT or have an opinion about the matter, leave your comments down below.
Rain-soaked week in February, we spent 4 days inside the Army's Maneuver Center of Excellence, which trains soldiers to serve in the infantry and armor branches. We saw different companies at various stages of training.
And that's a change from when I went in 1985. The home of armor back then was Fort Knox, Kentucky. They've moved that training center, and so now Fort Benning is the home of the infantry and the home of armor.
On day one, new infantry recruits on a bus from the Atlanta airport arrive at the 30th AG Battalion headquarters, where all new recruits are received.
Listen up! You ain't got one to hear from you at this point. It's yes, drill sergeant, no drill sergeant. You understand?
Yeah, this is a very common experience. It's kind of a defining moment, and it comes with varying degrees of anxiety that new recruits show up with on the bus. You're really not even at your basic training station. You haven't met your drill sergeants who will take you through your course of training. At the reception battalion, you're going to spend about a week or 2 weeks just getting familiarized, getting your uniforms, getting an advance pay, making any necessary purchases for things that you need but you don't have before you hit the basic training environment. There's a lot of processing that's going to happen in the reception battalion. And in most cases, the drill sergeants there are going to treat you with kid gloves.
Hey, drill sergeant! When I tell you, you will pass your folders to the front. Let's go! 30 seconds! Hurry up, find your back!
Once they're off the bus, the first order of business is establishing the code of conduct.
Because I promise you, if you don't pay attention to what I'm about to tell you, you're going to make your Army career very short. You treat everybody with dignity and respect, regardless of race, religion, color, national origin, gender, sexual orientation, and all other protected categories. Yes?
Now, this first conversation right off the bus is really designed to shape these new soldiers for success. A lot of them come from backgrounds where they may not have been raised to get along very well with others or to play very well with others. And so it's important right from the start to set the ground rules. These are the rules of engagement. So everybody's crystal clear on how serious it can be if you act out towards drill sergeants, towards other cadre or staff, or towards other soldiers in the wrong way. These are the rules of engagement. This is the code of conduct. It's all taken very seriously, even more today than it was when I first went in.
Yes! Sexual assault is any unwanted physical contact in a sexual nature. So if you put your hands on another individual and you're not instructed to, or you're not saving their life, and they file a sexual assault, and it comes down that you put your hands on this individual when you weren't supposed to, that is going to be on you. You will get kicked out of the military, and then you'll probably have to file as a registered sex offender.
Now, that kind of behavior has never been acceptable in the military. It's always been punishable under the Uniform Code of Military Justice. But in today's environment, interactions between people can be very sensitive, and people make off-color remarks. And so those drill sergeants and the cadre within this environment have to be part social worker, camp counselor, and military trainer.
Do you understand? Yes! Everyone look down at their toes. You should be able to fit a slice of pizza in between your toes. If you look around, they're going to see you. Because you're taller than everyone else! Quickly! Who wants to sit there? Move your boots! Grab one and go. It's all the same.
The recruits grab the snack that's waiting for them inside, consisting
That
of
looks
a fruit
delicious.
cup, sunflower seeds, a granola bar, and a juice box.
Watch the video. Remain silent.
Since 1775.
While those snacks may not look like much, it's because these guys are arriving after hours. These guys might be arriving in the middle of the night. Dining facilities are closed. They're not set up to open the dining facility specifically for one group that comes in after hours. And so they need to have something to give them so they can reasonably make it through the night. That may sound like babying privates, but some of these guys showed up not having eaten for 24, 36, or 48 hours. Again, they come from all backgrounds. And some people are arriving to the basic training environment with nothing.
The Army has been the bearer of our nation's strength in every crisis or conflict. Make no mistake about it, the journey you are embarking upon.
Now I'm looking at this soldier that's closest to the camera. He's got some beard growth. He's looking like he needs a shave. There's another guy down the road there with a goatee. If they don't know how to shave and maintain their facial hair, they're going to learn.
After being welcomed, recruits begin what's known as processing, which can take 1 to 2 weeks before their actual training begins.
In a little bit, we'll give you a period to go in a room by yourself.
First, they're given one last chance to discreetly dispose of prohibited contraband like drugs, alcohol, tobacco, and inappropriate photographs.
Now, the Army makes use of what we call the amnesty box. It may be set up in an amnesty room. People show up with things that they shouldn't have. And yes, you get a list, you get a packing list of things that are contraband items that you shouldn't show up with. And you know what? People still do. A lot of people show up to basic training and they're not experienced with doing the things that they've been told to do. The overarching objective is to train them and rule them in, not rule them out. We don't want to get rid of a new soldier just because of a small, stupid mistake. What we want to do is create an environment where systematically they learn how to adhere to the rules. Again, some of them have no idea what that means.
If any photo you possess on your phone is less than a bathing suit, you will not have it. You will delete them all.
Recruits get rid of contraband in an amnesty room, where they dispose of it by throwing it down a metal chute.
Is anybody confused on what you can and cannot have?
The next morning, the recruits report to the barber shop, where one barber has worked at Fort Benning for almost 60 years.
60 years, that's amazing. In 60 years, he's given one haircut. It's the buzz. That's all they get. That's all that they need to know. I wonder what his interview was like all those years ago. Can you give a buzz cut? Yes, sir, I can. You're hired. But you got to love what you're doing to do it that long.
Recruits are issued uniforms. They receive a series of immunizations and vaccines and get their official photo taken, along with myriad housekeeping details that fill up their 1 to 2 week stay in processing.
Hey, sit up straight.
That is until processing ends.
You notice how those guys were looking down at the ground and half asleep. Now, they've been moved around from station to station. They've been doing a ton of processing. Many of them have been eating 3 square meals for the first time in their lives. They've begun to actually move around and do physical things, some of them for the first time in their lives. And so an interesting thing happens in the training environment. When you have particularly a lunch or dinner meal, you can barely stay awake after that meal. For whatever reason, it will knock you out.
And the time for training finally arrives.
Let's go. Grab your bags and go.
We found a company of recruits about to begin training in the armor school.
Those are bridle.
These recruits are about to be picked up and taken to their barracks, where they'll reside for the rest of their training.
Let's go. You guys.
So they're splitting up the soldiers from the reception battalion. Some of them are going to the armor school. Some of them will be going to the infantry school.
This short bus ride from processing to their new barracks will be the most peaceful moments these recruits will experience for a while. What happens next is known as the shark attack.
They're about to meet their drill sergeants.
That goes on. Who you want? You want run.
It will be a formative experience.
Run.
And last,
They say what? Get your bags up right now. Get your bags up this way. Let's go. Do something. Why are you still not understanding? He just said it. Shut up.
a lot of guys show up to basic training having never been subject to rules of engagement, rules of conduct, personal interaction and behavior. And within the military environment, it is critical that individual soldiers be able to hear and respond quickly. If they're daydreaming, it's a problem. If they have an attitude, they have to get rid of it. And this entire engagement process may seem kind of crazy, but there is a purpose and there is a point to it, because you can't have soldiers looking to negotiate or argue about the execution of the directions of the NCOs appointed over them. When they're told to jump, the only question is how high. Their job is to jump and to execute directions.
Shut the hell up!
We're breaking a lot of habits from the civilian world, and nothing better than a little shock to the system to establish that that drill sergeant is in charge to let us start our training.
Pick up your bag and hold it!
The recruits spend much of the shark attack holding their heavy rucksacks above their heads,
Over your head!
which takes a physical toll.
Why is that so difficult? You can't pick that bag up. You decided to join the army and you can't pick that bag up. Right side bag, right side bag, right side bag.
The truth is, any person holding any object over your head long enough is going to distress your muscles and you're going to struggle with it, but you have to keep trying.
After about 20 minutes, the intensity begins to subside, and the drill sergeant's tone changes
We only
Not
produce
much.
the best soldiers in the United States Army.
before training officially begins. We found this group of infantry soldiers in week 11 of their training, practicing on the firing range. The mood was much more relaxed,
Try to get 8 up on my level.
and their conversations with their drill sergeants are conducted at normal volumes, like when this drill sergeant educated the recruits on the meaning of the military expression "ate up."
Is a piece of ate up gum good? You don't want something that's ate up, right? You want something fresh. You break the seal, it smells like olive oil, right? Okay.
Of course, if you've been in the military, you've heard the term "ate up." Definitely something that's very present in the Army. And it's a term to describe something that's really jacked up. We used to joke that we were going to prepare a badge. It would be the coveted 8-up badge. It'd be the number 8 with an arrow that we could award to special people in our organization.
That dynamic changes because we want the soldiers to become more critical thinkers.
Now, on this particular point, we don't need these guys to be critical thinkers. We need their head in the game. You're on the range. There are hazards. It's dangerous. You need to be thinking about the safety protocols and applying the techniques that you've learned through your marksmanship training to be successful and safe on that range. The bottom line is, I'm not sure about the critical thinking, but definitely they need to be focused.
Up to 241 hours of infantry OSIT are devoted to marksmanship, where recruits fire about 2,500 rounds using the M4 carbine, as well as the M249 squad automatic weapon, or SAW.
Now, this is good training. They're going to become qualified on their weapon system, but a lot of it is just for weapons familiarization. This is just the start, and it's purposed to give them a comfort level with the operation of the weapon system for performing immediate action, to be able to clear the weapon and put it back into action. Bottom line is, we want them comfortable working with their weapon systems.
We create lethality. We create expert marksmen at their individual weapons, because as an infantry soldier, that's what we're asking them to do.
Recruits get one of the most painful parts of training out of the way early.
Once we check your seal, you will not touch your ProMat.
This group,
they're getting ready to go through the gas chamber here, and they have what I would describe as a very comfortable, very nice M17 protective mask. Now, as an armor crewman or tanker, I had this antiquated M25A1 armor crewman mask, and unlike their mask, the filters weren't on each side of the face. The filter ran through a hosing system, and the filter was a canister that stayed in the protective mask carrier. And the problem that we experienced during the course of our training is that as you're out in the training environment, you're in the dirt, you're in the dust, and the inlet valve sticks out of the back of your protective mask carrier and gets full of dirt and mud. And if you haven't paid attention to that, it stays full of dirt and mud. And so when you actually need it, well, you may not be able to breathe because it's not clear. That's a problem.
Group of infantry recruits was exposed to CS gas, or tear gas, in week 1 of their training.
You're going to continue to file in until we tell you to stop. You're going to place your back against the wall.
I've been through the gas chamber many, many, many times. I've taken hundreds of soldiers through it. It's always an interesting training environment. The purpose of the gas chamber is to give soldiers confidence in their equipment, because you go in there with your mask on and you can feel the CS gas burning your skin, on your hands, on your neck. Any exposed skin that you have, it's going to be burning, and you are acutely aware that you're in a gas environment. And so you get inside there, you're able to breathe comfortably with your protective mask on. It's not a problem, but then you're told to unmask.
Recruits spend about 5 minutes inside the gas hut. Upon exiting the gas hut,
any fluid in your head is coming out your nose, eyes, and mouth
to remove excess gas from their uniforms. According to a drill sergeant, the effects of the gas begin to wear off after about 4 minutes. Some training moves indoors, like combatives, where recruits learn hand-to-hand self-defense tactics.
We're trying to teach them to achieve a dominant body position. So get out of one negative position and then switch roles so they end up having the upper hand in a fight.
Army combatives is always good training. And, it may not be essential in the combat environment. If you're going hand to hand, something's gone horribly wrong. If circumstances are so bad that you have to resort to hand combat, things have gone wrong. But it's still good training. And a lot of these guys, like I said before, a lot of the soldiers coming into basic training have never had rigorous physical training of any kind or self-defense training of any kind. And so this helps them gain confidence, helps them learn to move and control their body, and allows them to be able to defend themselves better.
During combatives training, recruits warm up with a particularly painful-looking exercise, referred to as the EO. While laying on their backs, they have to engage their core to wiggle across the entire room.
They use their momentum, shoulder blades, their core to help them create space, warm up the body.
And I would say, whether it's combatives training and learning to move that way, learning to move your body, the same thing happens on the confidence obstacle course. You learn to move your body and to negotiate obstacles, because in a lot of cases, people have never had to do anything like that. And unless you know the techniques, you don't know how to move. You don't know how to get through those obstacles. And so all of these taken in combination give you greater confidence over your ability to get through an environment or to overcome challenges in general.
Recruits work up a major appetite during training.
Yes, they do.
But Fort Benning is big, and they're not always within range of the dining facility. When they're training in the field, recruits are issued MREs, which stands for Meal Ready to Eat.
So I got to ask you, what was your favorite MRE when you were in the military? Let me know in the notes down below.
Each comes with an entree, like this vegetarian pasta with taco sauce, along with an assortment of items like mixed fruit, an energy bar, and this instant French vanilla cappuccino.
Cappuccino? Really? They never had cappuccino when I was in. Cappuccino? Wow.
Recruits just add water, shake it up, and enjoy. Once they're fortified, recruits return to their training. Recruits spend up to 60 hours in training known as MOUT, which stands for Military Operations in Urban Terrain.
Door left, door left. Our man calls door left.
Infantrymen are expected to fight in different types of terrain and survive and win the fight. Right now, they are getting their first taste of what that's like in an urban environment.
MOUT training, this is close quarters combat training. It's very, very, very important now, given the types of military engagements that we've had over the past 20 years. But this training is for familiarization, not really for technical mastery. These guys are going to go forward to their permanent duty station, and that is where they will be taken from familiar to a technical mastery of this and many, many other subjects.
T. All right, coming up.
In operations across Afghanistan, Iraq, we are conducting clearance operations, and it's applicable wherever we go.
Boom.
It's important for the future soldiers' muscle memory because they are working as a team with minimal.
The trainer just mentioned muscle memory, and that's a term that may be considered overused, but it is true. It absolutely applies to this and other basic soldier skills. You know, as these guys move through this kind of an environment, and particularly even if you're in a training environment and you're using blanks, or if you're doing the real thing, when you're in this environment, the brass starts flying. And so you have these expended casings of rounds. If you've ever had one of those go down the back of your BDU blouse, let me know how that went. I think it's a very common experience for people in the military, particularly if you've been a Marine or if you've been in the Army as a soldier, to get hot brass down the back of your shirt. Kind of hard to stay focused in a training environment when you got hot brass down your back.
Minimal communication, and they have to understand how that coordination works together.
Do it again.
What I think is particularly valuable for people going through infantry school right now is you have a cadre within the combat arms of senior NCOs, probably 95% of whom have combat experience actually performing the things that they're training you to do.
After 22 weeks of training, these infantrymen are ready to leave Fort Benning. Friends and family gather to watch their soldiers graduate on NOA Field.
They look like soldiers. They act like soldiers. They're carrying their head high. I have trainees that were not alive when 9/11 happened. I think that's pretty powerful that I still can find American citizens that want to volunteer to serve their country when we continue to ask them to go to combat.
These new infantrymen don't have long to greet their loved ones.
Get on the bus!
Or say goodbye to their friends before leaving Fort Benning to begin their service in the United States Army.
I guess everybody's circumstances are different, but in my case, when I went through basic training, we were eligible for up to 2 weeks worth of leave immediately after basic training. So a lot of this is dictated by the status of your next duty station. Your unit may be deployed, but in most cases, particularly soldiers coming out of a one-station unit training environment, in most cases, they're going to have the option of taking 1 to 2 weeks worth of leave. So I think overall, Business Insider did a pretty good job of giving you a look under the hood. Things do change in the military. If you went through basic training and had an experience, let me know in the comments below. I'd be very interested. And if you have an idea about a video that you'd like to see me do in the future, let me know. Thanks.